Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
Hurtling down Nevada's Interstate 15 in the stillness of midnight, I cruised at 75 miles per hour along a seemingly endless stretch of road. It felt like a journey to nowhere in particular, yet everywhere at once. The monotony of the ride started to lull me into a reflective state. I'm Jake Holloway, about 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, a little overweight, with sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. My thoughts drifted back to my wife and the life we once had. I remembered her at 22, the day we got married. She was beautiful, full of life, playful, and affectionate with a magnetic energy that drew me in completely. Those were the days before everything unraveled, before the pain, betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. We had been married for 9 years when it all fell apart. By then, we were both 31, building successful careers and sharing a clear vision for our future. Neither of us wanted children, and we had meticulously planned our life together before saying I do. From finances to household responsibilities, we discussed and agreed on how to navigate the challenges of marriage. Most importantly, we agreed on fidelity, absolute fidelity, and made a pact never to use sex as leverage or a weapon. Our marriage felt like a partnership in every sense, and our intimacy was, in my eyes, perfect. We had promised to face life as one, leaving behind our separate lives to build something new together. Yet despite all the planning and promises, something changed. Somewhere along the way, the foundation we had carefully built began to crumble, leading us to the breaking point. We both deeply enjoyed physical intimacy and shared a strong connection. She loved showing affection, often spending time caressing and playfully interacting with me. Her focus and attention were tender and sincere, making those moments special. She enjoyed being close, finding joy in our shared bond, and expressing her fondness through touch. I, in turn, cherished her presence and adored her completely. I took pleasure in showing my affection through gentle gestures, caressing, holding, and cherishing her. I loved taking my time to make her feel valued and cared for, always focusing on creating meaningful moments that brought us closer. Our connection was built on mutual respect and a deep sense of togetherness, and we thrived on the closeness we shared. For me, there was no indication of any restlessness or dissatisfaction. I was content, and I thought Megan was too. She often told me she was happy and that she loved me. I often repeated the same to her. I'd left on my once-yearly, week-long business trip to the home office in Dallas. I went back for a week each year for training updates on new product development, information about the competition, marketing tactics, and whatever else the company wanted to impart. It was part of the package when I was hired, and we both agreed it was okay, doable, and acceptable as part of our overall plan. The fellow who led the training sessions in Dallas, Dale Mercer, choked on a piece of his lunch the first day we were there, Tuesday. Several of us from the class tried the Heimlich maneuver on him to no avail. He died right there in front of us. Distraught doesn't begin to describe how we all felt, but we were helpless to save him. Without medical training, we might as well have been bystanders. We were dismissed back to our homes by the company president at 3 p.m. after we'd waited around in the classroom all afternoon. We were to make our own travel arrangements and go home. They'd be in touch when they figured out what to do about our updates. The company arranged for a bus to take us back to the airport, and we all set about getting our flights back to our respective homes on our own. I never called Megan, it never crossed my mind. So much had happened, and with the pressure to get a flight back, I was busy, preoccupied, and upset by the death of the instructor right in front of me. I left for Las Vegas at 5:30 p.m. Dallas time, having lucked out and caught a one-stop flight that wasn't full. We arrived at McCarran International Airport in Las Vegas at 8 p.m., gaining 2 hours from Central Time to Pacific Time. I was walking into my house at 9:30 p.m., just 15 hours after I had left at 6:30 a.m. for Dallas that morning. Megan is a tall, graceful woman with a lean build, large hands, and long dark brown hair that cascades to her waist. Her striking green eyes reflect her bright, thoughtful, and focused nature. She was everything I could have dreamed of in a partner. I was grateful she chose me, just as I had chosen her, and in my mind, we were on a path to a happy and lasting future together. Megan worked in a medical clinic as a licensed practical nurse and was the personal assistant to one of the 28 doctors that had offices there, Dr. Ryan Calloway. Her job was to see the patient after they had been shown into the exam room, take their vital signs, note any comments or complaints on the patient chart, ask pertinent questions, and then inform the doctor that the patient was ready. Dr. Ryan Calloway was a distinguished-looking, handsome, and fit 45-year-old endocrinologist with a 47-year-old wife and 3 children. He was into physical fitness, had no excess weight, was very bright, and was cool as a cucumber. Nothing much seemed to ruffle his feathers. He was probably 6 feet 3 inches with dark hair, and I guessed he weighed in at 185, very trim and fit. Being so tall, he had a commanding presence, especially given his demeanor, which was all business and no nonsense. Megan worked for him for 4 years. She loved her job and loved her boss. He was helpful in her obtaining her LPN, and she was also working to become a full RN under his guidance. As far as I knew, there was never any indication of anything inappropriate happening between them. I had absolute confidence in Megan, especially because of our understanding from before we were married. He seemed happily married to his wife, Claire, dedicated to his children and his work. He did have a strange way about him, though. I'd met him several times at Christmas parties and summer picnics that the clinic sponsored for all the doctors and staff from the various doctors' offices. He looked at me as if to gauge me, to sense how I felt about Megan, and he watched her and me together. It was strange, but I had never considered it seriously. It was only later that I remembered the feelings I had when I'd met him. Alarming noises intrude. I tumble back awake with violent motion that becomes rolling over and over, down, over, and then smash to a sudden stop. I smell the odor of hot rubber, hot oil spilling on a hot manifold, overheated engine coolant, and electrical smoke. My seat belt unsnaps easily, and I fall onto my head and shoulder. My car is resting upside down. The front and back glass are out, and the contents of my car are scattered around beside me. I am tangled up in the airbags that all had deployed in the car. I feel around, trying to sense if I am bleeding or if I have pain. Am I for sure conscious? I have no pain, but I am aware that sometimes trauma is not immediately noticeable. I know that I need to get out of this car right away because I can smell electrical smoke, and that might ignite into a gasoline fire, which would roast me for sure. The hood is smashed up and in the way of a frontal exit, so I scramble towards the back seat and out the back window. It is pitch black outside, and I can sense that I am on a slope. I cannot immediately tell how far down I am from the road surface, but I do know I am below it. Struggling with not being able to see anything in the thick black darkness, along with confusion, fear, and trying to figure out what to do, I begin taking one step up at a time, carefully trying to feel my way back to the road. It was about 1:30 a.m. the last I looked at the clock in the car, so there isn't much traffic out. So far, I haven't heard any other vehicles driving by. It is so black, so hard to see. I very carefully make my way one step, feel around, then another tentative step uphill and feel around, then another. I hear a hiss and rattling to my right, nearby. It's a rattlesnake, I think. I move one step to the left. The rattling stops. Another step up the slope. Then a few more. It is slow going. Finally, the ground levels and I realize I am on the road. I feel sore all over, no pain, no broken bones, and apparently no blood. I do not detect injury. I am without a scratch. I follow the road for a ways, trying to distance myself from my car in case it blows up. The force of an explosion and fire might finish my night. I needed to be farther away. I sat there waiting for someone to come by. My cell phone, lost in the debris below me in the wreckage of my car. It was sitting on the console beside me, recharging when I last remember seeing it as I sped down the highway, lost in my thoughts. The stars, set against the deep black sky, are literally all I can see. They are beautiful. I muse no trouble up there. I sense a spirit of despair, discouragement, and hopelessness. I wonder if I'll ever find contentment again. I check my pockets and find the rolled-up wad of $4,500 in $100 bills that I'd removed from the bank the previous afternoon. I also have a cashier's check for $28,000 more in my billfold, which is in my back pants pocket. Moments pass. Minutes. Then maybe a dozen of them before I hear the sound of an approaching vehicle in the distance, coming from the direction I think I have just come. I stand up, hoping I will be seen, but realizing I need to be careful not to get hit in case the approaching driver doesn't see me in time to react. Finally, headlights appear on the horizon. At last. Frantically, I wave and yell. The older pickup truck rolls by me, slowing down as it does. About 30 yards down the road, it stops. I begin walking, running, towards it and see that there are people in the bed of the pickup truck, waiting on me to hurry and get in. I get to the rear corner and can barely make out the faces of 3 people staring at me silently. I've had a wreck. I need help. Do you have a phone? I ask, mumbling in Spanish. They say nothing to me directly, but the driver says, "Andale cientos nos movemos." Hurry. Sit down. Let's go. I hop in and sit next to a young man across from another. A woman sits watching me from the front of the pickup bed by the cab. It dawns on me that these are undocumented migrants. Coyotes are driving the pickup, making their nightly run to pick up border jumpers along the road as they make their way out of Mexico during the night into the land of opportunity. I'm able to speak and understand basic Spanish and can communicate with the young man sitting next to me some. The people in the bed of that truck had been told to walk to the interstate highway, to the part that parallels the border a few miles north of their country. Then these coyotes prowled along all night, one after another, picking them up and taking them to a warehouse outside Albuquerque, where these fellow travelers of mine paid the coyote and went on their way throughout the USA. They have gallon plastic jugs of water. The girl in front offers me one that has about 2 inches of water left in the bottom. I drink it all, telling her thank you, repeating gracias in Spanish, handing the empty jug back to her. They seem puzzled. I guess it's because I speak Spanish and that I'm white. They must wonder why I'd be wandering around out there in the desert looking for a ride with them. The driver doesn't seem to be the wiser about me. He's driving along, looking for other pedestrian border jumpers to pick up, and he must assume I am one of the migrants headed to somewhere up north. He'll collect his fee when we get to wherever he is taking them, me. I feel to see if my wallet is in my back pocket. It is. I can feel the hard wad of $4,500 in my front pocket, pressed against my thigh as we jostle down the highway. The old pickup lumbers along, stopping occasionally to pick up another wanderer in the desert. Soon we are crammed full. We are nearing the lights of Albuquerque, but it's still 45 minutes away at the rate we are ambling along. My mind wanders back to what the heck I was doing when I crashed. I was thinking about Megan. And me. And all that had happened in the past few days. All that pain. The death of Dale Mercer. The hurt. The betrayal. And the treachery of what I discovered when I got home. I remember now. I must have dozed off and driven off the road, tumbling down a roadside washout. But I don't seem to be hurt. We pull into a warehouse just at dawn in South Albuquerque. Yawning and stretching, I hop out of the back of the pickup. The coyote looks at me like a tuna boat captain eyes a shark in his net. He wants to know when I got on and how long I've been in the truck. I think about 2:30 a.m. I tell him. I had a rollover back on Highway 15. Thankfully, you stopped to pick me up. I speak in English to him. My fellow passengers in the pickup line up to hand him money, their fares for further travel into civilization from the Mexican border. Then they'll disperse throughout the United States. Other trucks and cars leaving from this warehouse will take these men and women around the country. This underground network that funnels undocumented immigrants into and around the United States is centered right here, in this warehouse on the outskirts of Albuquerque. And I am now off the grid, to my family, friends, colleagues, and wife. Eventually, they'd find my wrecked car, find out it was me driving, that I am not there with it. So I was able to get out, but no record of where I went, or where I am. The coyote is acting like he is on the horns of a dilemma. On one hand, he can't charge me money like the others he picked up because I am not undocumented and am not seeking a ride any further into the U.S. On the other hand, he doesn't want me to leave and turn him in to Border Patrol, exposing his warehouse in operation. It dawns on me that he is seriously considering killing me. I smile, stick my hand out, and walk towards him, thanking him for the ride, saving me. He seems unsure of what to do. As I get to him, I swing at him as hard as I can, connecting squarely on his chin. He goes down like a turd in a punch bowl. He doesn't move. The others stand there, looking at me, not sure whether to run or hide. I just smile and walk out of the warehouse. Oh, how my hand hurts. I wonder if I've broken something. As I drove up the street to my home, it was only 8:45 p.m. I might get lucky yet tonight, I joyously thought. Megan will be so surprised and happy to see me. When I pressed the garage door opener, my bay was occupied by a black BMW. The vanity license plate read Callaway. My mouth went dry. My body tensed. I thought, oh, surely not. Entering the house through the connecting door off the garage, I came into the utility room. I slipped through the closed door into the living room and stood listening. I said by Neil Diamond cranked away on our stereo. From the bedroom was the noise I heard. We hadn't played that CD in a long time, I think. Muffled moans and whispers were softly audible as I walked in disbelief towards our bedroom. They never heard the garage door open, or me enter the house. I turned the corner, and at the end of the hall the bedroom door was open. The room was softly lit by candles, and I could see Ryan Callaway on top of my wife. His arms were on either side of her body, moving rhythmically as they slowly made love. He looked into her eyes, and she gazed back at him, their connection deep and intimate. How could this be happening? No, I'm dreaming. Megan. No. I trembled from within as I walked down the hall towards the bedroom. Their noises became more intense. I sensed they were about to climax together. I walked right into the room and smashed Callaway on the right side of his head with my fist as hard as I could. As he fell to his left, he made an arc in the air, landing off her and onto the floor. They were having sex without protection. Add insult to injury. I stood for a moment, looking at Megan, who seemed frozen in place. Her expression, a mix of shock and fear. She didn't say a word, or make a move. Her emotions, a complex swirl that I could almost feel from across the room. Ryan stood up and came straight at me, his face twisted with rage. 13 years older than me, taller, leaner, in excellent shape, while I was heavier and far from fit. He swung at me and landed a punch on my cheek. We fought, trading blows before ending up wrestling on the floor. Ryan was slick with sweat, making it almost impossible for me to get a solid grip on him. He had the upper hand, pulling at my shirt, using his superior strength to keep me off balance. The struggle was chaotic and exhausting, his physical advantage evident as I tried to keep up. Though older, he obviously was in far better condition than me, and was handling me easily. I struggled so hard to best him that I became labored in my breathing, unable to catch a cleansing breath. Then I felt shearing chest pain like I'd never known. I stopped struggling, fell over onto the floor, ceased all resistance, couldn't get my breath, and I had crushing pain in my jaw, shoulder, and chest so badly I was paralyzed. My thoughts were filled with emotional pain, raging anger, agonizing physical distress, and panic-inducing fear. Couldn't breathe, and I was fading fast. I knew I was passing out. When I came to briefly, Ryan was on his knees beside me, performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and chest compressions. His focus absolute as he worked to save my life. Even as my wife, shaken but now composed, dialed 911. I slipped out of consciousness again. The next thing I remember was waking up briefly in the ambulance. A paramedic was checking my vital signs and adjusting the 4 in my arm while speaking to the driver. The vehicle was moving quickly. Then everything faded to black once more. I woke and was in a darkened room on a flat, hard table, with gowned and masked men and women around me, all looking either at my groin or at the TV beside me. A screen was on the left by my head, and I could see what looked like a beating heart and a wire snaking its way around by it in an X-ray-like image. I could feel pain and then hear the click of a camera. I was in the cardiac catheter laboratory having an angiogram of my heart. It was my heart on the screen, and they were looking to see what was going on, shooting dye through my vascular system and watching for blockages or problems. I remember realizing that I was totally stoned. They'd given me something that cushioned me. I was not alarmed. I was not concerned. Though I felt the terrible pain, I was conscious and aware. They had oxygen on me, and I just lay there, stripped and bare before them, as they threaded the camera up through my groin and my aorta to my heart. Finally, they were done. They pulled the wire and all their contraptions out of me, closed my groin wound with a stitch or two, and held pressure on the artery to stop any bleeding. I was wheeled into an ICU room, where 2 nurses attended to me for a few hours. I slept. Time was now not perceived at all. I woke to the sounds of beeps and electronic whirring, but I don't know when or how long it was after all that had taken place. I was alone. But soon, a nurse entered and called for the doctor when she saw I was awake. Dr. Tim Raines was at my side in only a moment. "Jake, you've had a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Because Dr. Calloway acted so promptly, performing CPR, it probably saved your life, and you have no heart damage at all that I can see. I think the MI, the heart attack, was brought on by a traumatic event coupled with sudden physical activity and straining. And also that you aren't exactly a specimen of a good, healthy lifestyle. I expect you to make a full recovery, but you will be on thin ice if you don't change your lifestyle, watch what you eat, and start exercising. Oh, and avoid any more sudden trauma coupled with great exertion." Avoid it? I certainly didn't go looking for this. I'm only 31. Document. Can this really be my heart that caused all this? I asked incredulously. Absolutely. Is your heart, Jake? Like I said, you've had a heart attack. That you're only 31 only speaks to your lifestyle, your lack of exercise, and the sudden emotional trauma you suffered, along with the sudden physical exertion and straining, he explained again. Apparently, he could tell that I was in denial about this, and he was trying to make his point again. I was stunned, silent, and then remorseful. I began to cry. It all flooded back. I remembered what I'd seen, how I felt, what had happened, how I hurt, because the love of my life betrayed me. And she did it in my own bed, our bed, where we had owned one another, taking possession of each other. So many times. There's right and there's wrong. This was wrong. Many people suffer wrong and endure it. I won't endure this. This will be recompensed. I resolved from within as I cried and cried. The nurse seemed alarmed and began to try to soothe me, but the doctor beckoned her back. It's okay. It's a release for him. It will serve him to cry it out. It's therapeutic for him to relieve some of the pent-up emotion he still has. Let him go for a while. He'll be okay, the doctor said. He just said he'd look back in on me in a bit. But the nurse stayed. I cried for a long while. Actually, I sobbed. When I finally dried up a bit, I told her that I needed to make sure I had no visitors, that I did not want my wife in the room at all, or anyone else either. She said that my wife was waiting to see me, but that she'd see to it that I was not disturbed. I actually do not know how long I was in the hospital. Time had lost relevance, and it never registered to me how long I was there. I suppose it was a few days. But finally I was released. My wife had gone home, and so the coast was clear. When I did look at a clock, it was 1 p.m. As I was wheeled out to a cab at the front of the hospital. I thought Megan might possibly be at work, so I asked the cab to take me to my house. My Chrysler had been parked behind Ryan Calloway's BMW as it sat in my stall in the garage when I got home on Tuesday night. But they moved it to the street so they could get his car out. And on the street, my car still sat. Megan was not at home. So I got my still unpacked suitcase from where I had left it in the utility room and packed 2 more. I tossed my wedding ring on the bed and left. I had to make 3 trips to the car because I was weak from several days in bed, and because I wanted to be careful not to induce another heart attack. I went to the bank and took out in cash every dime that I could get. The rest they gave me in a cashier's check. I canceled all our credit cards, drove to my office, and quit my job. Megan had called them and told them I'd returned home early from Dallas but was in the hospital, that I'd be in touch as soon as I could. She did not know why I had come home early. The people in my office knew I had returned early and why. But nobody apparently told Megan. I had not spoken one word to my wife. Our eyes had met, while she was in the throes of her Ryan Calloway-induced climax. But no words were exchanged between us. Since I'd returned home, back to the present. I was starving. After laying the coyote out in his warehouse, I was in unfamiliar territory. But I realized it was probably a heavily Hispanic part of town. There were no cabs in that part of the outskirts of Albuquerque at that early hour, so I walked. Because it was right after dawn, it was safe. All the bad boys were either stoned or home in bed, I reckoned. Finally, after an hour of walking, mostly north, I found a busy restaurant. I went in and got a booth in the back. I ordered oatmeal with dry toast, orange juice, and a boiled egg. This was not my usual fare of bacon and eggs with a side of hash browns, grits, and biscuits and gravy. But I remembered Dr. Raines's stern admonition concerning my diet and lifestyle. Okay, beginning today, changes will be made. I thought to myself. Actually, beginning Tuesday night when I got home from Dallas, they started. As I ate, I sat there thinking. I'd already begun the long, arduous journey that I knew I'd need to make to reclaim any sense of direction in my life. Using the restaurant's business phone, loaned to me by my flirty waitress, I called the New Mexico Highway Patrol and reported my accident. I told them where I was placing the call from, where I thought the accident had occurred, and that I needed my possessions from the car. An officer came to the restaurant, since I had no way to go to him, and took the report over his own breakfast. That was cool. He was cool. You know, if the cops eat there, the food is good. Officer Evan Cole took me back out to the site of the wreck, ordered a tow, and took me back to Albuquerque. I was surprised to see that the car never caught fire. What a great guy this young officer was. He did write me a ticket, though, telling me it's required. We must assign fault, and you are totally at fault here. You fell asleep at the wheel. It won't be bad, just 3 points and a couple hundred or so. I'll lighten the charges so it won't ding you too bad. I was glad I bought the man's breakfast. He took me back to Albuquerque and helped me find a comfortable room. With the police report in hand and my cell phone back in my possession, I got a hold of the insurance company. They had an adjuster come look at the car and wrote me a check on the spot. I love State Farm. I walked to the closest car dealer to my motel, a Hyundai dealer, and bought a new Santa Fe. It was priced about what I got out of my older Chrysler, and the Santa Fe was new. So I came out okay, I thought. I gave them the check from State Farm after I negotiated my price down to what the check was written for. They looked stunned when I gave them the check. I'd purposely held out for that amount so I didn't have to come up with more, and they yielded when I walked out on them during negotiations. I knew that with all the police reports, accident activity, and now a new car purchase with tax and license, I'd be easily tracked if Megan tried to find me. I hoped she was trying to find me, because I was going to war with her doctor friend. And her. I did not care if they found me. I had nothing more to lose, and everything to gain if I could win. Whether they found me or not, I decided that I was now looking for them. I'd asked Evan Cole, the New Mexico patrolman, for the name of a pit bull-type divorce lawyer, and he gave me the name of the most feared in Albuquerque, Victor Belliceau. I got right in to see Mr. Belliceau. He was probably 65, medium-sized. His gaze gave me shudders. His steel blue, cold eyes, no hint of a smile, perfectly kept hair and a silk Italian suit, emitted confidence, aggression, competence, and collusion. My preliminary fee was $4,500. I handed him my cashier's check, and he took it, promising me my change the next day. I told Mr. Belliceau all that had happened. I told him about Ryan Calloway, MD, how I caught him screwing Megan, how I fought with him, that I had a heart attack, and that he saved my life. I wanted him to hurt. I wanted him to know I had no thanks in my soul toward him for saving my life, since my goal at the time was to take his. I wanted to sue Calloway. I wanted to ruin his marriage, and I wanted to shame and humiliate Megan, as well as hurt her financially. Mr. Belliceau suggested that, since I'd had a heart attack, he would also try to get me some extra cash from Calloway for his part in that, too. Never mind that he'd saved my life. It had been a few days since I had checked my cell phone for messages. Too much had happened, and I never thought to look. There were several, many from Megan. Megan's main theme was, "Jake, please contact me. We need to talk." It was the first time. "Honest, Jake, I love you. Please, let's work this out. Jake, I went to get gas, and they refused my credit card. Jake, there's no money in the account for the house payment or the electricity bill. What have you done? Jake, where are you? They said you quit your job. Jake, I've been fired. I need to know when you're coming home. Piss on her and the horse she rode in on. Those were my only thoughts about her messages. There were other calls, some repeats from her. My folks called. Her dad called. My ex-boss called, wanting me to come back to the company, explaining that even with all the traumatic events that had happened in Dallas, the company felt they needed to salvage me because I was vital to the company. And my ex-boss advised me that my wife had been making a nuisance of herself. I called my ex-boss and had a nice, long visit. I told him the situation with my wife, that I was in Albuquerque, and that I needed time and distance for the moment until I could figure out a plan. He got me to agree to return to work, at a substantial increase in pay and benefits. But I told him I needed a month or so to recover from the heart attack and reintegrate myself into some sort of a life in Las Vegas that did not include Megan. He was very amicable, telling me to get back when I could, that he'd hold my job open for me. He also said I had some money coming to me yet that I hadn't gotten when I had been in earlier in the week. I asked him to hold it for me, that I'd need it when I got back. He said that he had the check in his desk at that moment. It was actually a bonus for not quitting, agreeing to stay on at the company. An incentive to keep me happy. I was still not scratched. Mr. Bellesu wanted information. I signed releases of all sorts for the hospital to give him my medical records and doctor's notes. I gave him power of attorney to deal with Megan and her attorney, instructing him not to give her or anyone my current whereabouts. He told me he would do a thorough background check on Ryan Calloway, on the medical clinic, and on Megan. I told Mr. Bellesu that I was going to slip back to Las Vegas and find a place to live, but that he was to proceed with divorce papers and a lawsuit against Ryan Calloway personally and against the medical clinic that he was part owner of, which Megan was an employee of under Calloway. I also advised Mr. Bellesu that I would pay no alimony, no house payments or utilities. Megan would need to figure it out or fail on her own. I wanted nothing to do with her. I figured Calloway was probably helping her financially. We sued the medical clinic for $18 million for allowing employee fraternization, causing this divorce action. We settled for $550,000. Mr. Bellesu got a third. We sued Ryan Calloway for $18 million and got nothing. His wife beat us to it and he took bankruptcy. That was acceptable. I'd watch and see. Maybe sneak up on him later. According to Mr. Bellesu's investigators, Megan got a job in a nursing home, dispensing medication to the residents. Her pay was less than she was making with Calloway, and she lost the house, lost her car, and was living alone in a studio apartment not far from her new job. She walked to work for the first year. After the trauma of finding my wife screwing her boss in my home, in our marital bed, I got busy doing two things mostly. The first thing is I became a regular at the gym. I worked out for 1 hour in the morning and walked/ran 2 miles at night. My diet became healthier and my body showed the benefits of my labors. The second thing I did was plunge back into my job. I found a nice apartment in Henderson, a suburb of Las Vegas, and commuted to downtown. My new digs were a top-floor, 3-bedroom, 2-bath penthouse with a 360-degree view of the Las Vegas metropolitan area. It was stunning. I had no place to spend my additional income, let alone my windfall from the lawsuit against the clinic. So I pigeonholed it. I kept it in cash, hidden, and I bought gold coins and stashed them. Every payday, I put enough to cover my bills in the bank and took the rest in cash. I bought a gold coin if I had the money, or put the cash away in my hiding spot if I didn't. I eventually expected a visit from Megan and wanted to be liquid if she tried to come after me for alimony or for her half of what we accumulated. It may have only been fair to give her half. But what she did wasn't fair. Screw her. I didn't have any inclination to be fair to her. Since her treachery toward me, she never really fought me on anything. She signed the divorce papers and accepted things without a peep. To my surprise, the divorce went through during the first year after I discovered her tryst. Being a regular at the gym, I gradually got to know others who worked out at the same time. Some of the men became friends, and I also developed a close bond with one of the women. Her name is Lola, and we hit it off quickly. We're not in a traditional relationship but share a casual friendship that works well for both of us. She's a petite blonde with a lively personality, a turned-up nose, and dimples in her cheeks. We spend time together a couple of evenings a week, sometimes having late-night hangouts or occasional sleepovers. It's a dynamic that suits us both. All the physical exercise and healthy eating changed my appearance and attitude. My job performance and income improved, and I seem to be on the mend emotionally, except I still burn inside. About the seduction of my wife by a man in authority, her boss, who was in a position of trust, and who seduced her. I still have no idea how it all happened, or when it started. I found out from Mr. Bellesu what I could about Dr. Ryan Calloway and set out to follow him once or twice per week, on different days, at different times, looking for patterns, indications of his social life, and whether it included Megan still. I stalked my prey, at his home, at his work, at the grocery store, wherever and whenever I could. I made it my hobby to find Ryan Calloway on any given day and follow him, get to know more about him. I even watched as he picked up his kids from his ex-wife, took them to a park, then to Dairy Queen. They sat inside eating their sundaes, while I sweltered in the Nevada heat, watching them. The kids were mid-teens, I'd guess, but everyone likes a Dairy Queen sundae now and then, always from a distance. I kept an eye on Ryan Calloway, not every day, but a few times per week. He'd moved on from the medical clinic after the lawsuit. Probably had to sell his corporate shares under duress, I guessed. Perhaps to settle my lawsuit. The medical clinic had strict non-fraternization rules in place. Even though Calloway was a shareholder in the corporation, he was bound by the rules and subject to the board's judgments and decisions. Medical clinics and physicians carry large insurance policies that generally are umbrella coverage for liability of actions from the physicians they insure. Physicians are regularly sued for medical decisions they make, and occasionally for things like this. I was the beneficiary of that part of their insurance. We settled out of court. Calloway left the clinic and landed in a large hospital in Reno, working in their endocrinology department. Mr. Bellesu indicated he was pretty well broke, but he was making good money again, and I kept track of him when I could. I'd sit in my Hyundai and watch his comings and goings, once in a while, trying to get a feel for his life, his patterns. From what I could tell, he and Megan were done, but I did not know for sure. Another year passed. I decided the only real satisfaction I'd ever have would be to kill Ryan Calloway, though I'd hurt him, and he'd lost his wife, lost his children, lost his job, lost his wealth. I wasn't satisfied. He was rebounding, and I couldn't allow his life to soar again. Nope, this man must die. How he managed to seduce Megan, I had no idea. He must have been a master. I was sure that she was mine. I'd have bet my life on her. How he ingratiated himself to her, got inside her protective zone, and then exploited her, like he did, screwing her without protection. Just plain pissed me off. I couldn't find my way around it. I knew he may still be physically superior to me, so I reasoned that I had to get the jump on him. I waited for him beside his car one night, as he was leaving the hospital. As he walked to his car in the darkened garage, I grabbed him around the neck from behind, stuck a 6-inch blade in his right kidney, and twisted. Just as I inserted the knife into his body, I whispered in his ear, "I'd like to thank you for saving my life. Oh, and you ruined it too." He collapsed, looked up at me, and recognition swept across his face. Then the death mask replaced it. He bled out right there on the ground, at my feet. As I watched, I took his wallet, his watch, his Masonic ring, and his gold necklace, so it would look like a robbery. The gold necklace had an inscription, "To Ryan, from Megan. Love always." Where did she get the money to buy that? His wallet had a few hundred in it. I dispersed his credit cards among the street people downtown. I treated myself to a new set of tires from Discount Tire with his cash. His watch also had an inscription, "All my love, forever Megan." I suppose that was the answer to the question. Are they still seeing one another? but I still wondered where she got the money. Maybe he was paying her. I had no idea. The murder of Dr. Ryan Calloway made the evening news the next night, and the police promised to do due diligence in finding the murderer. I was never questioned. I always wondered why. I hoped it was because they were off chasing rabbit trails about it being a robbery. No other motives were assigned to his death. What with the engraved watch and necklace, it was obvious to me that Megan and Calloway were still an item, or at least getting together occasionally, for sex. I realized that she loved him. With his death, I knew I'd run into Megan sooner or later. I just knew she'd find me, to try to smoke me out, get me to admit to his murder, or kill me herself, or seduce me. I'd be ready. I received a phone call at the office one afternoon, from what I thought was one of our suppliers. But I did not recognize the number. You killed him, didn't you? I know it was you. You've impoverished me. And now you killed this good and decent man who only tried to help me. And help people. He was a doctor. For God's sake. Jake. You scumsucker. It was Megan. And it was 2 years since our last conversation. It was a diatribe. But I hadn't heard her voice in all that time. She was yelling and crying into the phone at me. It was unsettling. And I wondered if she intended to do me harm. Or come after me in some way. She slammed the phone down. I never uttered a word. I never had a chance to. She was definitely distraught. 2 weeks after Ryan Calloway was laid to rest, I was at home on a Saturday morning, sleeping in, catching up on my rest. I had my friend Lola with me, who'd slept over. We'd been up late, dancing the horizontal mambo. A knock, a loud, intrusive knock came on my front door. I answered the door, naked. It was Megan. She stood in my doorway, looking at me, standing there in the doorway, looking at her. She was dressed. I was not. She looked haunted. Her eyes, ringed with red. Her hair, a mess. She was crying. You've gained weight. Get the hell out of here, you shameful 304, and do not ever come back here. I sneered at her, slamming the door in her face. We have to talk. She yelled through the door. Open up, Jake. Wait. 5 minutes. I yelled through the door at her. I went into the bedroom and got my nighttime partner up. You have to leave. Something bad is about to happen, and I don't want you around when it does. I ushered Lola out the back way, down the fire escape. I picked up my Springfield Armory .40 caliber XDM, and still nude, walked quietly to the front door. I listened for a moment, and then suddenly opened the door. Megan was standing there, with a revolver, pointing right at me. I aimed and fired. At the same time she fired. My round went through her left eyeball. Her round missed me altogether, embedding itself in the wall over my left shoulder. She went down without a sound. How she could miss from just 4 or 5 feet away, I don't know. I called 911. The police dug her bullet out of my wall, and the medical examiner dug my bullet out of her brain. I told my story, and after a few days, I was informed that no charges would be filed. They did not, however, return my XDM to me. Nobody ever contacted me about the death of Ryan Calloway, though I expected they would. I even wondered if I'd be arrested at some point. I suppose the lack of evidence went for me, though I do not know for sure. Over 2 years had elapsed between our confrontation in my bedroom and his death, so it was just overlooked. I imagine this is one of those things where life just goes on. There is no real ending, because I'm still here, still functioning, still working, still screwing occasionally, still eating and exercising, taking care of myself. I grieved. I did. It was terrible. It lasted over a year. But I did wake up one day and realize that the gift of life is still mine, and it is mine to do with as I will. I do not seek another wife, but I like an occasional roll in the hay. I have friends, but none close enough to hurt me emotionally. I interact, laugh, joke, empathize when necessary, and encourage when possible. I'm 40 now. A lot has happened to me in such a short life. My best friend is Luke, my yellow Labrador retriever. I still have my job. I've turned down promotions that would have moved me to other parts of the country. but I received raises and live comfortably. I really got through all this without a scratch. When you consider all that happened, I could have died, should have died, several times in the last 10 years. Not a scratch anywhere. That is remarkable. That's the end of this gripping tale of betrayal and revenge. But was his justice justified? Or did he go too far? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. See you next time.